Hello and welcome. I'm Jonathan, the hidden face behind the channel, but not for much longer because here I am in front of a camera. Let's see how that goes. I'm a little camera shy, hence I prefer narration, but I feel this is a good thing for the channel. I want to bring a new element, a richer experience, and if you're interested in the raw footage and behind the scenes narration on my channel, then I have a playlist with various bloopers for your delectable delight. Without much ado, let's continue. Today is a little celebration for the channel for me because this is something new, and I've decided to do a double bill. We're going to narrate two stories by Lady Jane Wilde, Oscar Wilde's mother, who was a wonderful poetess and writer in her own right. These two stories I have chosen have a not a feminist theme, but feminine theme about demonic women, and we cannot get enough of demonic women. Just as long as we're on the wrong, just as long as we're on the right side of them. Okay, so these are two very short pieces. I prefer to do that today just to get used to this whole new setup that I'm doing here, and it will give you an idea. We're going to break the ice today, in other words. So one is called 12. You see, I forget the name. 12 Horned Women. And the other story is called The Demon Bride, I think. You've caught me off guard now. Suddenly I'm gone, my mind is blank. Okay, basically demonic women. Both stories, short and not so sweet. So let's get cracking on with this. Just give me a second here. By the way, I'm a technophobe, so you have to take all that into consideration. This is why I don't do lives, because I fumble and I'm all over the place, basically. Oh, in case I didn't, this is my house. Well, not my house. My. This is where I write novels and narrate the Timeless Terror series for the channel. So I'm here most evenings, most mornings. It's a small garden office, I would say, next to my house. And this is where it all happens. I like to come here at night, put on some candles, light some candles here, and maybe we should do that as well. Give a spookier feel to the narration. But right now it is 10:28 in the morning, Spanish time, and hopefully by the time you hear this, or the finished product with the sound effects and the music and the full production, then it will be twilight hours. The darker the better, as you know, with the Timeless Terror series. All these old horror gems have to be listened to, must demand to be listened to in the right context. And that is lots of candles, dark, spooky atmosphere. Let's get cracking on with this. Give me a second here. Just in case you're wondering, I'm filming this on my MacBook Pro, and I'm also recording the narration on GarageBand, which I have used from the beginning, and I really love it. Okay, so we're going to narrate The Horned Women. I said 12 because it's really is 12 witches. You will see what I'm talking about now in a minute. So The Horned Women, okay, by Lady Jane Wilde, who was, I believe, a feminist in her day. Whatever she was, whoever she was, whatever type of person she was, it's immaterial because she writes a good story. She writes a good spooky tale. Tea, as always. Number one. I drink copious cups of tea every day. I suppose that would be classed as a mug, would it? Well, now you have my mug here, so let's get cracking. Bear with me, this is my first time doing this now, so I'm kind of like a deer in the headlights, as it were. And by the way, just before I start, I'm going to add this to the blooper reel, keeping it real with the blooper reel, as we like to say on the channel. And you can look at that if you want. The hardcore fans, maybe, yes, they might be interested in listening to the mistakes, the bleeped out expletives. I will add the bleeps later. And or you can listen to the finished product. Either way, it's the same story. One is with warts and all, literally. Today we're speaking about witches. Or you can listen to the end product, which will be on the main playlist, Timeless Terrors. I'm just going to do this, okay? I'm not sure if you can see my face. I can't see what you can see right now. Oh, okay. Look, this is a work in progress. We're going to start with this, okay? As time goes by, I will find a different setup, a better setup for these behind the scenes footage, as it were. Later, I keep stopping, don't I? Later, I'm going to add in the intro and outro by our dubious narrator, our fictitious narrator, our framing narrator, I suppose you could call him. Quite a dubious character, I think, our narrator, because he seems to be constantly on the run from something or someone. And he's quite paranoid. Interesting character, to say the least. A rich woman sat up late one night carding and preparing wool while all the family and servants were asleep. Suddenly a knock was given at the door and a voice called.
Open! Open!
Who is there? Said the woman of the house.
I am the witch of the one horn,
was answered. The mistress, supposing that one of her neighbours had called. What kind of neighbours does she have? That's hilarious. And required assistance, opened the door, and a woman entered, having in her hand a pair of wool carders and bearing a horn on her forehead, as if growing there. She sat down by the fire in silence and began to card the wool with violent haste. Suddenly she paused and said aloud,
Where are the women? They delay too long.
Then a second knock came to the door, and a voice called as before.
Open! Open!
The mistress felt herself constrained to rise and open to the call, and immediately a second witch entered, having 2 horns on her forehead and in her hand a wheel for spinning the wool.
Give me place, she said. I am the witch of the 2 horns.
And she began to spin as quick as lightning. And so the knocks went on, and the call was heard, and the witches entered, until at last 12 women sat round the fire, the first one with 1 horn, the last with 12 horns. And they carded the thread and turned their spinning wheels, and wound and wove, all singing together an ancient rhyme, but no word did they speak to the mistress of the house. Strange to hear and frightful to look upon were these 12 women, with their horns and their wheels, and the mistress felt near to death. And she tried to rise that she might call for help, but she could not move, nor could she utter a word or a cry, for the spell of the witches was upon her. Then one of them called to her in Irish, and said,
Rise, woman, and make us a cake.
Then the mistress searched for a vessel, to bring water from the well that she might mix the meal and make the cake, but she could find none. And they said to her,
Take a sieve, and bring water in it.
And she took the sieve and went to the well, but the water poured from it, and she could fetch none for the cake. And she sat down by the well and wept. Then a voice came by her and said,
Take yellow clay and moss and bind them together and plaster the sieve so that it will hold.
This she did, and the sieve held the water for the cake. And the voice said again,
Return, and when thou comest to the north angle of the house, cry aloud 3 times, and say, The mountain of the Fenian women, and the sky over it is all on fire.
And she did so. When the witches inside heard the call, a great and terrible cry broke from their lips, and they rushed forth with wild lamentations and shrieks, and fled away to Slieve Namon, where was their chief abode. But the spirit of the well bade the mistress of the house to enter, and prepare her home against the enchantments of the witches, if they returned again. And first, to break their spells, she sprinkled the water in which she had washed her child's feet, the feet water, outside the door on the threshold. Secondly, she took the cake which the witches had made in her absence, of meal mixed with the blood drawn from the sleeping family. And she broke the cake in bits, and placed a bit in the mouth of each sleeper, and they were restored. And she took the cloth they had woven and placed it half in and half out of the chest with the padlock. And lastly, she secured the door with a great cross beam fastened in the jambs, so that they could not enter. And having done these things, she waited. Not long were the witches in coming back, and they raged and called for vengeance.
Open! Open!
They screamed.
Open, feet water!
I cannot, said the feet water. I am scattered on the ground, and my path is down to the loch.
Open! Open, wood and tree and beam!
They cried to the door. I cannot, said the door, for the beam is fixed in the jambs, and I have no power to move.
Open! Open, cake that we have made and mingled with blood!
They cried again. I cannot, said the cake, for I am broken and bruised, and my blood is on the lips of the sleeping children. Then the witches rushed through the air with great cries, and fled back to Slieve Namon, uttering strange curses on the spirit of the well, who had wished their ruin. But the woman in the house, but the woman and the house were left in peace. Let's take it down. I tend to race. Too excited. Far too excited. When I'm reading the story, I'm in the story, and it's all unfolding in front of me. I'm just living the moment, in other words. But the woman and the house were left in peace, and a mantle dropped by one of the witches in her flight. And a mantle dropped by one of the witches in her flight was kept hung up by the mistress as a sign of the night's awful contest. And this mantle was in possession of the same family from generation to generation for 500 years after. Let's try the ending again. I'm quite picky about the final line of every story, and normally I have to do it, repeat this line maybe 5 or 10 times before I'm happy with it. And this mantle was in possession of the same family from generation to generation for 500 years after. I'm not happy with that either. But the woman and the house were left in peace, and a mantle dropped by one of the witches in her flight was kept hung up by the mistress as a sign of the night's awful contest. And this mantle was in possession of the same family from generation to generation for 500 years after. Finished. Well, short and sweet, but now you get the picture. So when you're listening to the final product, when you're listening to the final narration, you can picture, if you want, if you're so inclined. I know I am. Or imagine where this recording took place and the situation and the context and the atmosphere in which this story was recorded. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I certainly did, I think. I need to think about it. In general, it's a positive experience, and we're going to bring that to the channel. Now, that's that story. We have a second one, because after all, this is a double bill. So you're going to need to bear with me for a few minutes while I set up the next story, okay? Talk between yourselves. Feel free. If you need to get water, if you need to use the bathroom, now might be the time to go. If you feel like a whiskey, anything, I'll stop talking now. And by the way, if you're interested, these texts are all on Project Gutenberg. It's normally the original faithful story you will find on Project Gutenberg. Not abridged, not altered in any way. In theory, it is the original writing of the author. Now, I'm looking for a story here called, another scary lady story. There are literally hundreds. Give me a moment. Great, I can't. Oh, hang on. No. Bear with me. Walk the dog if you feel so inclined. Might be a good moment right now. I need to check this. Okay, this is live TV, folks, and I have lost my second story. Bear with me. The Demon Bride. Classic Irish folklore, where a beautiful but evil spirit, the demon bride, appears as a stunning woman to seduce a mortal victim. Unlike a standard ghost, she is often described as a soul-stealing entity who lures men with a kiss. The victim typically dies in a state of madness, haunted by the realization of their fatal mistake. This is just perfect for the channel. I love this stuff. Okay. Dark, dark, dark. Did you walk the dog? Did you take that double whiskey? Did you drink your coffee? Did you have your daily ration of tea? Now's a good time. I don't know why. I can find the demon cat, but I can't find the demon bride. It's not quite the same. Okay, so this story is sometimes called The Stolen Bride also. And by the way, Lady Jane Wilde wrote under the pen name Speranza. Okay, I have it. I couldn't find it because it's under a different name. It's The Stolen Bride. Okay, so I'm probably going to have to call that The Stolen Bride, not The Demon Bride. The Stolen Bride has less impact than The Demon Bride. Very different message. But let's forge ahead with this one. And it's the same length, more or less. Okay, it's quite short again. Unlike H.P. Lovecraft, who has very little dialogue, I don't know if he couldn't write dialogue or he just had an aversion to dialogue. I don't know. I've narrated quite a few of his stories on my channel, and dialogue is virtually non-existent. I know when I'm writing my own novels, novellas, short stories, dialogue is number one. Because you can tell so much through dialogue without saying it, you know. And this story takes place in County Clare, which is the county next to where I'm originally from, Limerick. It's a beautiful area of the country, it really is. The Cliffs of Moher, maybe you've heard of this. They would be one of the highest cliffs in Europe on the Atlantic, on the wild Atlantic. And it is wild. I've experienced it firsthand. Never again. Next time I go, I think I should be drunk or something. Okay, let me just check the... Good. I just saw what I look like. Maybe that was a mistake, I'm not so sure. Anyway, let's continue. I'm quite camera shy, okay? So I'm out of my comfort zone here, but, you know, it's good to lurk outside your comfort bubble now and again. Need to get into the zone. About the year 1670, there was a fine young fellow living at a place called Kerrin in the County Clare. He was brave and strong and rich, for he had his own land and his own house, and not one to lord it over him. He was called the Cairn of Kieran. He was called the Cairn of Kerrin, and made a time... I'm going to start again. I'm not happy with that. Give me a second. I just want to make sure that this is the same story. Okay, so the stolen bride is the definitive version of the demon bride. I need to get all these facts right, you know? Okay, this is folk horror. Okay, good. I knew it was folk horror, but it's nice to actually read those exact two words. About the year 1670, there was a fine young fellow living at a place called Kerrin in the County Clare. He was brave and strong and rich, for he had his own land and his own house, and not one to lord it over him. He was called the Cairn of Kerrin, and many a time he would go out alone to shoot the wild fowl at night, along the lonely strand, and sometimes cross over northward to the broad east strand, about 2 miles away, to find the wild geese. One cold, frosty November eve, he was watching for them, crouched down behind the ruins of an old hut, when a loud splashing noise attracted his attention. "It is the wild geese," he thought, and raising his gun waited in death-like silence the approach of his victim. But presently he saw a dark mass moving along the edge of the strand, and he knew there were no wild geese near him. So he watched and waited, till the black mass came closer, and then he distinctly perceived 4 stout men carrying a bier on their shoulder. Okay, stop there. A bier. Sometimes I come across words in these old tales of terror that I've never seen before in my life. And sometimes it's a typo, which is worse. You spend half an hour looking for a word, and then you discover it's a typo. And then he distinctly perceived 4 stout men carrying a bier. Maybe one of you knows what a B-I-E-R is the word. Anyone? This is when I refer to Google, the new god. Okay. A bier is a movable stand, frame, or platform used to support or carry a coffin, casket, or corpse during a funeral service or to its final resting place. Interesting. New word of the day. Bier. 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 Not sure how it's pronounced. And then he distinctly perceived 4 stout men carrying a bier on their shoulders, on which lay a corpse covered with a white cloth. For a few moments they laid it down, apparently to rest themselves, and the cairn instantly fired, on which the 4 men ran away shrieking, and the corpse was left alone on the bier. Cairn of Kerrin immediately sprang to the place, and lifting the cloth from the face of the corpse, beheld by the freezing starlight the form of a beautiful young girl, apparently not dead but in a deep sleep. Gently he passed his hand over her face and raised her up, when she opened her eyes and looked around with wild wonder, but spake never a word, though he tried to soothe and encourage her. Then, thinking it was dangerous for them to remain in that place, he raised her from the bier, and taking her hand led her away to his own house. They arrived safely, but in silence, and for 12 months did she remain with the cairn, never tasting food or speaking word for all that time. When the next November eve came round, he resolved to visit the East Strand again, and watch from the same place, in the hope of meeting with some adventure that might throw light on the history of the beautiful girl. His way lay beside the old ruined fort called Lias-na-Fálinga, the Fort of the Mantle, and as he passed, the sound of music and mirth fell on his ear. He stopped to catch the words of the voices, and had not waited long when he heard a man say in a low whisper,
"Where shall we go tonight to carry off a bride?"
It's dark.
"Where shall we go tonight to carry off a bride?" "Where shall we go tonight to carry off a bride?"
And a second voice answered,
"Wherever we go, I hope better luck will be ours than we had this day 12 months.
"Yes," said a third.
"On that night we carried off a rich prize, the fair daughter of O'Connor. But that clown, the Cairn of Kerrin, broke our spell and took her from us. Yet little pressure has he had, yet little pleasure has he had of his bride, for she has neither eaten nor drank nor uttered a word since she entered his house." "And so she will remain,"
said a fourth,
"until he makes her eat off her father's tablecloth, which covered her as she lay on the bier, and which is now thrown up over the top of her bed."
On hearing all this, the Cairn rushed home, and without waiting even for the morning. Start again. On hearing all this, the Cairn rushed home, and without waiting even for the morning, entered the young girl's room, took down the tablecloth, spread it on the table, laid meat and drink thereon, and led her to it. "Drink," he said, "that speech may come to you." And she drank and ate of the food, and then speech came. And she told the Cairn her story, how she was to have been married to a young lord of her own country, and the wedding guests had all assembled, when she felt herself suddenly ill, and swooned away, and never knew more of what had happened to her until the Cairn had passed his hand over her face, by which she recovered consciousness, but could neither eat nor speak, for a spell was on her, and she was helpless. Then the Cairn prepared a chariot and carried home the young girl to her father, who was like to die for joy when he beheld her. And the Cairn grew mightily in O'Connor's favour, so that at last he gave him his fair young daughter to wife. And the wedded pair lived together happily for many long years after, and no evil befell them, but good followed all the work of their hands. This story of Cairn of Kerrin still lingers in the faithful, vivid Irish memory, and is often told by the peasants of Clare when they gather round the fire on the awful festival of Samhain, or November Eve, when the dead walk, and the spirits of earth and air have power over mortals, whether for good or evil. I'm not happy with that ending. This story of Cairn of Kerrins still lingers in the faithful, vivid Irish memory, and is often told by the peasants of Clare when they gather round the fire on the awful festival of Samhain, or November Eve, when the dead walk, and the spirits of earth and air have power over mortals, whether for good or evil. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Till we meet again,